Okay. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome once again to another episode of Talk 22, the show hosted by your boy, me, Mizzle to the Jizzle. And I am here today once again talking about the conversations that you want to talk about when we bring it to you with the real perspective that you want to hear. So, with that being said, I think on my guest from the show last time we had a nice conversation about hip hop and uh, who's overrated, who's not overrated. It was a good conversation, a good flow to it, and everything. So with that, I'm gonna change it up again, like we always do. And today we are gonna talk about something that I personally love talking about, and one thing that people who know me know I love. And one of the things I love is sports. Yes, we're missing sports with this quarantine and everything. We're missing sports, and I just enjoy watching sports of all kinds. But one thing that we've noticed in sports in today's climate is there's a contrast, and there's a contrast between sports and society, and that's what we're going today. We're going to talk about the all the differences and contrasts between sports and society and where they lie. Do they blend? Do they not go together? How does that work? So we're going to talk about it. And with me today, I got my panel. As always, I got some guests that know a little bit something about sports themselves. So with my panel today, I have with us out of the Madison area via now the Milwaukee area, the homie Urban Legend. Can it unmute your mic? Say what's up to the people.
Hello, how y'all doing?
Okay. I also got Trishelle Forge is on the line. Trishelle, you tell them what's up.
What's up? What's up? What's up?
Okay. As well, I have back to the show. He gave such great insight. We brought him back to the show once again. The homie K Sankofa is on the line.
What's good? What's good?
Yes, of course, I always have my man Dash DB is on the line. He's typing away, gonna answer all your questions as you bring it in a live feed in a live format as you bring it. So we bring it. With that being said, I'm gonna start off with the first question. To my panel, I'm gonna ask. I guess we'll go straight to it. Should sports be political? I'm gonna start with my homie K Sankofa.
Yeah, I think this is a dope question. Definitely a good first question. And I would say it's a matter of, I don't think it's a matter of whether sports should or shouldn't be political. I think that inherently, in many ways, sports is political. I think that anything that deals with economic resources in exchange for labor is already something that has or can be politicized, just in the terms of an economic sense. So you have to have player unions, and players have to be afforded, rights and things like that for their, for their workmanship. And I think that off top, we think about, people playing in a league versus ownership in a league versus how much people are getting paid in the league versus college students who are playing at a professional level almost many times and who aren't getting compensated. So I think we have a lot of political issues that arise. But then I think where we see the problem is of course, power not conceding, but then also people thinking that you should just compartmentalize sports and not talk about it in terms of the political aspect of it. Like when people like LeBron or Kaepernick speak out, people want to condemn that. But then also, I think the other side of it is that we still need to touch on the fact that there's a lack of ownership for the main people who are contributing. Like if you look at it in terms of music, artists create the music, especially in the world of hip hop, mainly Black artists, but then have always not had as much as a say so in the ownership or masters or rights or things like that. I think we can make a direct parallel in sports where you have the majority of the labor and the majority of the talent coming from, NFL is almost 80% Black. NBA is 80% Black, and in many cases they don't want to see players fighting on behalf of Black issues, and they also don't want to give ownership to that of Black people. So I'm gonna leave it at that. Just those little factors.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna go next to Trishelle. Trishelle, I'm gonna ask. you the same question. Should sports be political or should like, I guess, as the CNN or not CNN, Fox News host once said, should they just shut up and dribble?
It's a good question. It's not exactly should sports be political, because I believe that we can't choose what is and is not. Is it a good platform for social politics and social issues and social justice issues to be voiced? Yes, it is. I believe in anything that people are involved in can be political, and sports, professional, collegiate, right? Even youth sports, right? Little recreational associations, like high school club, they're all political, right? There's politics involved in one way or another, right? You just can't escape it, and that's part of life.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'm gonna ask Urban Legend, same question, I guess. Do we want to, I mean, do we just want to see the game? Or like, do we want to actually necessarily hear about political stuff going on? I know just recently we heard about the NASCAR issue, which I guess later they have now determined that it wasn't a hate crime of some kind, I guess is what the FBI has determined.
No,
They said
I didn't hear
that
about
based
that.
off of the fact that I guess the news had been there prior to him actually being there, so there was no way that they would have known it was for him, I guess. But
Okay.
you know, they did have the NASCAR owner went on and he said, you know, I really don't want to talk about race. I want to talk about racing, but because the way it is, this is where we're at. So I guess I'm gonna ask you the same question. Should we talk about, I mean, should sports and politics mix?
I mean, the way I look at it is, an athlete, they're a tax-paying citizen. So I feel like if they have an opinion on something, you know, some of the issues going on in society, they have every right to voice that opinion, you know. And I know people want to, you know, go to sports to get away from the whole political aspect of society, but at the same time, you know, these athletes, they have opinions and they should be allowed to voice those opinions, you know, and in fact, they are, you know, trailblazers for making change in some of these, you know, society issues, you know. So I feel like it's important, you know, to have politics be a part of sports, you know. And if you take a look at, for example, LeBron James, you know, he has been one of the men in the forefront of, you know, social change. And I feel like he's one of the main guys out there who you see on the front lines, you know. And I don't want to see that taken away from these athletes because I feel like that's important. That's an important thing that, you know, they have also going on with sports, you know. And I feel like those two can be tied in together, you know.
Oh, here you. Dash, I'm gonna throw you in on that question too. How do you feel?
Yes,
Should sports and politics, should they cross? Or should they stay on their side of the field?
I definitely think that I definitely think they should cross. And why that is number one, I mean, it's in this country, I'm speaking more specifically, if things were equal and we are living up to the ideals of this country as have been written down in the Constitution and other places, then you probably wouldn't have athletes speaking out on political stuff. If everything was the way it was supposed to have been and everybody is entitled to the same amount of things or treated the same way, this wouldn't be an issue. But because that's not the case, this is an issue and athletes are caught in the crossfire of it because they experience it too. So, you're not going to, everybody has the right to express an opinion, whether you agree with it or not. And they're speaking out on things that they've seen and things that have occurred to them. And at least in this country, there's no right for you to muzzle somebody that's speaking and expressing their own opinion. Number one. Number two, with sports, it's they a lot of the sports athletes, even though some of them don't want to be role models and whatnot, and this can be a whole nother conversation about who's a role model, who's not. They're in the spotlight and people look up to them, and they have a impact that can be made by using their platform for good or bad. I'm not saying it's incumbent on every athlete to speak, but if there's something that you feel passionate about, you are in a unique position that the majority of other people in this country are not in, to voice an opinion and possibly get things moving and make change. And if that's something that's important to you, I don't know why you wouldn't express that opinion.
Okay. So, okay, with that being said, I'm gonna move on to the next question. Next question is came to me via Twitter that there was a lot of talk about team names and mascots, especially like recently. Trishelle, I'm gonna go to you here. Should we be offended by team names or mascots that have not so PC names in this day and era?
Are we offended by Confederate statues? Then if you are, then some of those mascots are very offensive. And that's the bottom line, right? And that's the problem that the other side doesn't see. They don't see how that's offensive. They don't see that tens of thousands of people in a stadium making the tomahawk chalk, right? The tomahawk chop, and they don't see how that's offensive. How is that wrong? Right? That's extremely offensive and hurtful. And we should not celebrate things like that. And we should be able to be more creative, right, in naming teams and designing mascots. They are offensive, right? There are certain teams I won't represent because of their mascot. And if an organization can't see the sense in why to change it, right, then it's a deep-seated problem. High school mascots should not have any type of resemblance of a Confederacy, right? Because under the table, what it's saying is that it's okay. And you can't give me it's part of our history argument, because that is it's not part of that high school's history, right? And it doesn't need to be represented every single day to those students. So yes, we should be very offended, and we should work to change those.
Okay. K-Sun Kofa, same question. I believe there's a athlete from one of the universities in Mississippi, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, who said he's straight up not even going to play unless the whole state of Mississippi changes their state flag that take off the Confederate flag off of the state flag. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, how should we feel about these images? I mean, some might say they've always been called this. So, I mean, should we really take that as offense? I mean, they've been named this.
I think that I think it's very important that we start to shed light on these things, and that we start to change our images, change our symbolism, and change our narratives. And I think that the guy who is deciding to stand up and do what he can do to not continue to feed into, historic and years of oppression and years of bad symbolism and bad casting onto particular groups, I think that what he's doing is a good thing. And I think that that's important to recognize that, where did you say that is? That's in Mississippi, right?
Mississippi, yes.
So yeah, in Mississippi, they have the Confederate flag in their state flag, right?
Yep.
That's what he's upset about.
And and that's he should be upset about that. Like we know what that flag means. A lot of people like to say, no, it's about history or it's about ancestors. Well, if we really want to talk about ancestors, that flag represents a history of ancestors trying to kill my ancestors, a history of enslavement of my ancestors. That flag, you know, represents hatred for Black people, hatred for people of color. That flag represents white supremacy. We know what that flag represents. And so, you know, I feel like he should feel uncomfortable playing with that being a flag paraded at the sports games. And I think that what's even more significant is that just like him, I think I read that NCAA was going to cancel doing any sports events or something like that in Mississippi until they do the same thing that what the athlete is calling for. So, you know, I think that people are taking it seriously, and it's about time that we have, because even when you look at names like Redskins or all of the other names that are out there, like, we would be furious if it was, you know, the New England Niggers or something like that. You know what I'm saying? We would be furious. And that's the way they see, that's the way Native Americans see those types of terminologies. Like those terminologies, they don't call each other that. You know what I'm saying? That's something that's degrading. That's something that was a history that was forced onto them by European settlers. So that's not something that's a part of their culture or something that's commemorating them. And when we think about the things that we do want to commemorate, it's like people want to talk about the statues and the flags and say you're commemorating history or whatever, but like we don't want to commemorate terrible things like commemorate like putting up somebody like the hero if they're really the villain in what happened. You know, we could put up a statue of Harriet Tubman and say we want to commemorate slavery. We could put up a statue of Frederick Douglass and say we want to commemorate a history of oppression and people who made it through that. But you don't want to put up statues of Confederate leaders and the people who were clearly on the wrong side of history. How can we celebrate the losers of history in both moral and physical battles? And so I think similarly in these situations where we're with sports, you know, how can we play or take part with a conscious heart when we see the same commemoration of violence, the same commemoration of racist oppression? It's like, I salute that kid. I salute the NCAA, NASCAR. I salute NASCAR for getting rid of it. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, I don't salute the NFL because, you know, the NFL is, you know, like what they did with Kaepernick and what they did with trying to silence a lot of what was a peaceful protest. Colin wasn't trying to remove no flags or remove no statues. He was just trying to sit on his knee and, you know, let people know what his voice was in terms of oppression. And the NFL shut him down. And now they want to backtrack and say we were wrong. So, you know, thank you for saying you were wrong, but, you know, it's a little too late now. You cost the man his job. And, you know, to me, I was like, I see where you side. And you know, the NFL is also a place that's, you know, been historically conservative and historically not as inclusive when it comes to equity, when it comes to Black people. They treat, you know, a lot of the people on the field just like, you know, how Black people would be treated on the field back then. You know, that's your only job is to go do that, and you work for us and you have no opportunity for ownership. So I think that a lot of what's happening regarding symbolism is important. I think we need to get rid of all of those symbols, the Redskins, all of that extra stuff like that. I think Mississippi should have been got rid of that in their flag, because all it really symbolizes is like loss. Like you all are like a war that was lost. Like it symbolizes being a loser. So you have a big L on your state flag is what I see. And you need to take it down because not only is it disrespectful, but it's an L. It's a big L. It's like walking around with a big L on your forehead.
Right. Yeah, so I hear you on that. Urban Legend, I guess we're going to get your thoughts on this too. When it comes down to it, like you said, with the Redskins versus Cowboys, you know, people sometimes take it like it's not a big deal just based off of the fact that they've been named these team names for years and years, you know. But would we look at it differently if it was the Carolina Crackers versus the Jacksonville Jigaboos or something? Would that be different?
No, I mean, I wanted to touch on something that Sankofa was talking about with the NFL, and as far as Kaepernick and the kneeling, the NFL they basically are about that bottom line, you know. So whatever was affecting their dollars, they felt like Kaepernick was affecting the dollars kneeling, because a lot of the fans, you know, they didn't appreciate that, and a lot of those fans said, you know what, I'm not gonna support the NFL. I'm not gonna go to a single game I'm not gonna watch it on TV, and you guys are gonna lose dollars. And basically, what it came down to was dollars, and that's why Kaepernick is not in the league anymore. And as far as the mascots and the names, if something is offensive to somebody or something is offensive, then we should all take offense to it, because the Redskins is offensive to, it's not offensive to all Native American people, but it's offensive to some. So if it's offensive to some, it should be offensive to everybody. And that's how I feel about that. And wasn't it Marquette? They had changed their name too from I believe they were the Warriors, right?
Right.
And now the Golden Eagles, because people took offense to the Warriors. So and with Chief Wahoo with the Cleveland Indians, I believe they changed that mascot in 2018, I believe. So if something is offensive, it's offensive, and we shouldn't have to. Nobody should have to deal with, something offensive like that.
Hey. Okay.
And the Redskins, they have done absolutely nothing, and they are absolutely defiant on the fact that they want to keep that Redskin name because it represents something different to the Redskins as a organization, but to the Native Americans, that's offensive to them,
I'm okay. I want to I guess go along with what Kane Sankofa was saying there. I'm gonna ask the next question. I'm gonna start off with Dash. Dash, I'm gonna go to you with this one. Is the whole idea of even being an owner and trading players, like some would say you trade slaves, is that like really like, I mean, we see that in sports, but like, is that like too familiar to Black people, or is it just business? I mean, what is your whole
I think
idea
it can be
to that?
both. I think it can be both. Slavery was a business. That's how white folks looked at it. They looked at it as a business. Now for African American, for Black folks, it wasn't no business. It was torture. It was being degraded. It was manual labor. It was a combination of all these different things. But I think it's going to depend from the point of view. I think for Black folks, I'm not trying to speak for all Black folks, but for me, there'd be something in it. And I know cats get on ESPN and Fox News and say, yo, I got traded. You got to understand the business. That's the business of it. So it is a part of what you're engaging in, but it feels familiar. And why I feel a certain way about it is especially the way some owners are, the way they handle their business. And I know we was talking about the NFL, and I don't want to keep, going back to that. But I mean, look at somebody like Jerry Jones. And I know all them players got great relationships from Jerry Jones. You can talk to Dion and Michael Irvin and all them cats. They love Jerry. Jerry did this for me. But when I heard Jerry said, you're not going to kneel, you're not going to disrespect the flag, or I'm going to fire you. I'm like, yo, are you serious? You're trying to tell me right now what I can and cannot do. You're trying to muzzle my freedom of speech and how I want to express yourself because you a little offended about the flag that ain't got nothing to do with, and it ain't got nothing to do with it. So like in instances like that, like, I'm gonna feel some type. I wish somebody would have knelt and see what he did. I wish Dak would have knelt. I wish Ezekiel would have knelt, because that would have been something. That would have been something. You had one of those two kneel, and then you put the pressure back on Jerry Jones. Then you could really see what it is and what it's about. Getting back to your question, it is a business. There is a familiarity, but the difference between then and now is that we were forced into labor at that time. Right now, we is not forced into labor. It is a choice. It is a choice if you want to subscribe to that and be a part of what the NBA, NFL, NHL, whatever it is, to be a part of that sport, knowing full well that in essence, it basically, as somebody said before, I think it was Urban Legend, just comes down to the bottom line of, it's a money game. there's a dollar sign above you, and as soon as that dollar sign diminishes or is not worth nothing, then we get rid of you.
Mm. Trishelle, do you agree? I mean, there's the whole idea of an owner and a player being owned. Does that sit well with you?
So a player is not owned, right? A player has a contract, right? Like in baseball, right? They have collective bargaining, I believe, right? So in a lot of our professional leagues, they have players' unions to protect their rights as workers. It's a contract. And even though, right, we have lots of brown skin playing in professional sports, we still have a lot of players that never even make it to that level, right? So these are the elite, right? I don't want to call them chosen ones, but they are elite and it is their choice, right? They could very easily play in college and decide, well, I don't want to play in the NBA. I'm going to go pursue a different type of career, right? People hundreds of years ago that looked like us didn't have a choice, right? So being traded is part of the business. It is a transaction, right? And just like in high school sports, right, with tryouts, in club sports, you have to make cuts. You have to make decisions based on what's best for the team. So owners, right, and front offices of teams have to make those decisions. And regardless of what a personal relationship is, right, they trade players away for whatever reason, right? Whatever's best for the organization at the time. And that's just how it is. I think it's business. I think it's a tough business. It's vicious. It is, but I think there are some similarities, but at the end of the day, it's business and it's transactions and there's contracts. That's all.
Okay. Kason Kofa, I'm gonna go to the next question with you. A lot of times we see when players do speak out, when players do certain things, they get reprimanded, and they get reprimanded like Dash Dub was talking about. Jerry Jones, to the example, said if anybody does kneel or whatnot, he's going to pay the consequence on my team, on my squad, But a lot of times in these different sports, we've seen examples where the owners actually get away with some of the biggest, one would say, get away with murder when it comes to stuff. Be that example with Donald Sterling, although he did get excommunicated out of the league, but you had an example of him with his racist stunts. We had examples of bad dealings with women with the Robert Kraft and such. We've seen a lot of these things, and we feel like a lot of times when it comes to executives or owners, a lot of times they just get maybe a little slap on the hand versus what the player would maybe get in the same reference. What is your thoughts on that, Kason Kofa?
Yeah, I think like the idea, I think an important point that Trishelle was saying was that things are contractual, right? And like it's a business. And I think an important thing though is, the idea of freedom. Like, of course, back in the past, we weren't free. The idea of freedom now is that you should be able to have autonomy. And I think one of the biggest issues is just that, in the midst of players who are maybe voicing their opinions, whether they be political or not, but who are doing so for the sake of something that means something and is valuable to them, and you have an organization with a choice to back them up and support their lives, you know what I'm saying? Or succumb to, the calls of the immediate crowd, because when we talk about the bottom line and the dollars thing, like I'm almost sure that the kneeling wasn't stopping no white people from watching the NFL, but I'm certain that when the NFL came down on Colin, it stopped a lot of black people from watching the NFL. So when we want to talk about the bottom line, you know what I'm saying? I think that the owners, they have a choice. Like they have a choice within who they're going to support, within what they're going to like listen to. And it's like, you know, it's like if you got Black Lives Matter yelling this and All Lives Matter yelling this, then they have to decide which side they're going to support with. And so the idea that you could have the freedom to just express your opinion is then shut down on the Black Lives Matter side. But you don't stop a Brady when he says he supports Trump. You know what I'm saying? It's like my thoughts are it's up in the air, and the owners are playing a shaky game, and they get to give the excuse that it's about dollars. But at the end of the day, it's like, you know, everybody's going to have their own political thoughts or their thing. And you want to decide to stop stuff when it's Black Lives Matter. And as far as like what the owners get away with, you know, that's just power. That's just power. We probably won't know half of what they are doing or half of what they get away with. But, you know, that is what ownership is about. And I think that, you know, just the worst part in it all is that, you know, we don't have a lot of perspective and we don't have a lot of voices when it comes to ownership. Like Trachelle said, it's all contractual. So you have to be willing to sign onto that contract. But, you know, more and more as things happen, we now see, oh, signing that contract means you can't stand up for what you believe in, or signing that contract means you're going to be muzzled, or they're going to try to come after you. And it's like, why did they have to come after people so hard for kneeling during the anthem? Like, that's not that big of an action. Like, why do you have to come at people so hard for that? When, like you said, it's people in management doing way worse. And it's like, the only reason why they did that is because white people got offended. And so to me, that's like you're picking a side. You're saying, you're disregarding the idea that Black lives need to be, you know, in some way restored and given some sort of justice in America, which is just the truth. Like, and you're saying, I'm not going to let you say that. I'm not going to let you stand on those principles. And it's like, how can we not take that as a slap in the face? And then especially with like what you're saying, they get away with murder or whatever the case. Now, I don't really know too much about what the owners are doing outside of, you know, owning. You know what I'm saying? I don't really know too much of what they're doing, but you know, I think it's just an imbalance. It's an imbalance of power. We need more share. The players need more say so, because even with the players' unions, as was mentioned, the players' unions seemed like they couldn't do nothing about Colin getting fired. Seemed like they couldn't do nothing about Black players wanting to have freedom of speech. Seemed like they couldn't do nothing about those things. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, who does the player unions help? Who is it for? You know, who gets helped? Who gets supported? All of those things. You know, it's just a lot of questions. I don't have all the answers, but I know that those are some questions I'll pose.
Okay, Urban Legend, same question too. I guess, you know, Kason Kofor does have a point that the NFL players, you know, they did have the right on certain teams to kneel, and they soccer leagues have knelt, and other sports have knelt. We do see that in the NBA they do not kneel, but we also found out that that's due to their collective bargaining. They already put that in their collective bargaining that they will not kneel and they will respect the stand and whatnot. Who should we be mad at with that? I mean, I know the 49ers were just in the Super Bowl. Should, you know, Blacks, I guess, feel like they shouldn't follow the 49ers because they didn't support Cap? Or, I mean, how should we feel about that?
Yeah, the NBA, that's part of the rules where they have to stand for the national anthem, and the NFL, that's nowhere in the rules. So Colin Kaepernick was not breaking any rules when he knelt, you know. So as far as him being out of the league, what did he do to deserve to get, you know, blackballed, you know, blacklisted from every team in the NFL, you know? And I feel like the 49ers, they didn't stand by him, you know. All these owners, they want to blame it on, oh, well, Colin Kaepernick, he doesn't have the ability anymore, you know. But I was watching a game with the Pittsburgh Steelers where they had some guy named Duck as a quarterback, you know. And you telling me that this guy's better than Kaepernick, that's just blasphemy right there, you know. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And I feel like, you know, Kaepernick just got a raw deal. And if I was Kaepernick, I wouldn't even want to be back in the league, you know. Why would I want to be a part of an organization, you know, we got to protect the shield? Why would I want to be a part of something that was so quick to get rid of me, you know, and treat me like an outcast, like I was, you know, committing some criminal act when all I did was kneel for and stand on my principles for what I believe, where, you know, Black men are being, you know, unfairly brutalized by unnecessary force by these police officers. And why would anybody have a problem with that? That should be a universal thing that everybody should be in agreement on. You know? Like, what's the problem here?
As we know, not everybody does. We heard Drew Brees actually had some thoughts on it earlier. I guess he did renege on that and did see the error in his ways, is what he stated. But Darius, DUB, I'm looking, I guess, same question to you. Are we looking at it where, like, basically Kaepernick and Donald Sterling got the same exact treatment in the end? They both got excommunicated from the league based off of two opposite things, but same result. So what are your feelings towards that?
Man, I mean, it's what happened to Cap is just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous to me. When should someone be ostracized for doing the right thing in multiple ways? And I know some people is like, man, yo, you know, I don't like the messenger. I'm like, sometimes you can't choose who the messenger is. People giving that same stuff to Kyrie, like, oh man, I don't like it because Kyrie don't know what he's talking about. It's like, it comes down to you doing what's right. I mean, period, the end. Are you trying to do what's right or not trying to do what's right? And these people are criticizing these cats, and they may not know all the background knowledge behind it, but you know what? At least they had the bravery to stand up and do something they believed in, while everybody else was kind of sitting there, you know, twiddling their thumbs or whatever they're doing and debating whether they wanted to be the face of it. Yo, it's hard to be the face or the first of anything. So, you know, I give Cap the props for that. I don't know if Kyrie was the one that's first talking about, you know, maybe this Orlando thing and is not it. And I know there's debate about, you know, his motivations, but yo, he became the face of it. Yo, that's hard. So what I'm alluding to with Cap, I'm like one, being willing to be the face, stand up in front of everybody, knowing the blowback that you're probably going to get for doing that. That's why I'm riding with Cap. Number two, when he talked to I forgot Nate Boyle or something like that. I forgot the gentleman's name, but he talked to him about doing it in a way that wasn't disrespectful. That's how it came.
The soldier that fought.
Yes, that's how it came to the kneel. So this is a brother that came into it, was like, I know I need to do something because of the injustices that's going on. I'm willing to step out there by myself right now and just be the face of it. Two, because I don't have all the information, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna reference somebody that is in the army and figure out a way I can try and still make this point, which he should have had to capitulate, because what's wrong is wrong, to try and figure out the best way to do it so it's not disrespectful. So, you know, I think Cap did two rights, and unfortunately, two rights basically got him kicked out of the league, which to me is crazy. So I mean, they came up with all these excuses. They had a coaching. If you want to get down to the nitty gritty, brother just came off a Super Bowl. They had a coaching change and some other stuff. His numbers weren't what they was, but they had the coaching change and stuff. But it doesn't mean like 3 years, all of a sudden he can't play. Just like Urban Legend said, they had Duck in Pittsburgh. Some of these backups is like, dude's like 44. He was never a starter. I'm looking at these cats like McCowan. I'm like, yo, McCowan is your backup? Is this really happening right now? I'm like, McCowan could hold a stick to what Cap could do, and that's on a bad day. I'm saying though, it just makes no sense. But that's the type of pushback that you get here. As far as Donald Sterling and all that other stuff, brother had a history. So I know people want to say, oh man, you can't just kick him out for that. No, he had a history. Similar to Donald Trump, got a history, especially when it comes to black folks renting out their properties. So it's not just, oh man, he got caught in the conversation. Oh girl, got him on the recording. No, man, you got to follow the breadcrumbs, G. You got to follow the breadcrumbs. And it's the same way it works with Trump when everybody's trying to throw this other stuff out. He ain't about this conversation, but I'm just trying to show similarities. It's not like he just became racist when he turned president or whatever. Nah, follow the breadcrumbs. With all these things, there's a trail to be followed. This is not the first time. It's happened multiple times. That's why they in that position. The last thing I want to say, I don't mean to go off, but the stuff with Cap now of cats like, oh man, we should have we should have brought dude in, or we should have seen what he was about. Now y'all want to say it because in this now it's acceptable that it's like, oh man, yeah, we were wrong. Yeah, you know what, we should have brought him in. I wouldn't even put up with that. If I was Cap, I'd be like, I'm done with it. I'm like, I did what was more important than anything else. And that was trying to start this conversation and bring attention to it. Yeah, I'm the one who basically got ostracized and for it and, crucified for it early. But now look where we're at now. And I think his work that he's doing off the field right now is far more important than anything he can do on the field. And that's real.
I agree. But to your point also, we also see a league that has Cam Newton, another black quarterback, not in the league currently.
That's a whole.
Going to the next question, I'm going to go to Urban Legend. Case and Kofa was talking a little bit about ownership and whatnot when it comes to sports as well. Is the NFL's Rooney Rule even effective in your mind?
The Rooney Rule, right?
And if you want, for those of you that don't know, I'll explain. The NFL Rooney Rule is a rule that the NFL came up with that mandates all teams to at least interview a black candidate to their team whenever they have an opening in their position. So, Urban Legend, going back to you, is the Rooney Rule effective in your mind?
All right, well, let's look at the numbers here, right? You got 70% of the league is African American, but you only have 4 head coaches out of 32 teams that have a minority head coach. 3 are black, and then Ron Rivera is a Latino. So you have 3 head black coaches and 1 Latino for 32 teams. If you do the percentages on that, that's only about 10%. Now, how does that correlate? I mean, okay, so yeah, we can interview a minority candidate for a head coaching position, but what is that actually doing? All that is doing is they are fulfilling something that has to be fulfilled, as far as the Rooney Rule. And they say, oh, did we interview a black coach yet? Yeah, we did. Okay, good. Let's move on to the one we want to hire now. I mean, I guess at least it's getting them an interview, and maybe it's putting their name on the map a little bit. But we have that coach in Kansas City, Eric Bieniemy, I believe his name is. He's an assistant coach. He was actually the one calling plays for the Kansas City Chiefs
For the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Why is he not a head coach right now? And you got these white assistant head coaches, Matt Patricia. What has he done, right? He's 9-22 and 1 as a head coach for the Detroit Lions. And Jim Caldwell, I believe, went 9-7 the year he got fired. Have we seen him since? Like, where is he? Okay, and Lovie Smith. He had a pretty good run with the Bears, I think, and nothing. So all these black head coaches, once they get fired, you'll notice that they don't get another shot.
True.
Raheem Morris, another example, a young brother who coached Tampa Bay for a couple years. He's I believe now he's a defensive coordinator now. But why is it so difficult for African Americans to get head coaching positions? Well, I'll tell you why. Because the owners are the one making the decisions, and how many owners are of minority descent? You have one minority owner with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't know exactly where he's from, but I think he's from the Middle Eastern, And so when you have an owner who's a white man who is part of the good old boys club, and he sees, people like him, he identifies more with them as opposed to people who look like me, you and me. So I feel that has a lot to do with, black head coaches not getting that opportunity to be a head coach.
Okay. Trishelle, I'm gonna go to you next. Same question. Is the NFL's Rooney Rule effective in your mind, or is it just kind of the NFL putting another scam over our eyes?
Yeah, I don't think it's in effect, but it's not efficient, right? Or effective. It was basically a makeshift rule or agreement, right, to present the idea that people of color in pursuit of head coaching jobs were getting a fair shake. They don't, right? It's just like for decades, right? I don't know about you guys, but as a kid, right, probably up until I was 13, 14, I thought only white guys could be quarterbacks. There weren't a lot of brown quarterbacks growing up. Well, why not? Right? It's basically the same principles, right? It almost goes full circle, right, to our first question, where like politics being involved in sports or sports being political, but so much of our everyday lives are present in sports, right? The people that have the money control the system, and they control opportunities, and they don't want to let go of that power. So the good old boys club, right, that owns teams doesn't want to let go of that power. And by sharing it with coaches of different color, right, or eventually letting other owners come in that are of different colors, right, they feel threatened, right, and will lose that sense of power, right? And it comes down to systematically not believing that black men, right, brown men, or even women are smart enough or capable enough to coach a team at that level. And they are, right? And I agree with you, like it's basically like a one and done, right? Like brown coaches is like, this is your shining moment. If you're not 100% successful, then you just prove our point. You don't belong, and nobody else is going to pick you up. And it happens time and time again. And unfortunately, because it's a sports organization, right, not really a public entity, that type of behavior, that pattern will continue to happen, right? Like just because of all this that's going on, we're not going to see an overwhelming amount of brown head coaches, right, in the next couple of years. I'm not confident that's going to happen. And it's a shame, right? But it's part of the unfortunate society that we live in. So this Rooney Rule, right, is just for show. It's always been for show, right? And that's there's no good way to force private organizations to give qualified people of color a fair shake at head coach jobs. You just, because then you're taking away right there autonomy as a private organization.
I feel. Case and Kofa.
Yeah.
If indeed the Rooney Rule is a sham, that even if it does just allow you the one and done coaches or the one and done opportunities, I'm going to move on to the next question. Should all sports mandate interviewing at least one minority candidate for all coaching positions? Should all sports, I know NFL has this, but should this be something that all sports hold? Because it does provide an opportunity, even if it is, we're saying a one and done type of opportunity. At least we get, I mean, it's messed up for me to say at least we get the one, but in a way, at least we get the one.
Right. I would say certainly anytime we can get an opportunity, we want to have that because success is nothing but preparation meeting opportunity. So if you're prepared for that moment, and like Urban Legend said, you know, you might get the opportunity, but if you, or I think it was Trishelle who said it, if you ain't perfect, you know what I'm saying, then they might boot you out that first year, even though some of them have winning seasons. You know what I'm saying? But you know, it's almost like the Obama effect. Like you can get elected president, this prestigious position. We might think you're smart enough if you fit all of these guidelines and you appear to be perfect. You know what I'm saying? So I say if we can get that opportunity, yes. But I think the problem is sometimes the preparation for said opportunity is skewed. Like Urban Legend also said, it's about the culture of the organization. So it's like if say all of the sports did, I don't think the NBA would need to affect this rule because the NBA has been a lot more progressive than the NFL throughout the timeline that I've seen. They've been more open to a different culture, different personalities in their characters and players. You know, just hip hop music in and of itself, being open to that and infusing that with NBA culture is something that I think shows like the mindset and the core culture of the NBA. But when you think about the core culture of the NFL, like Trishelle said, you got the good old boys club. You know what I'm saying? So even if you do get that one black person to interview, that black person isn't going to be hired unless this black person fits a certain standard of respectability politics, can understand and relate to the politics that the owners have, and that's from that good old boys club side of things. So even if they do get hired, are they doing a service of you know, dishing out the type of progressive culture that we want to see and creating space and creating opportunity and the representation that we want to see with people who look like us? I would say no. I would say you're going to get somebody who's probably going to be more like a Herman Cain or a now Ben Carson, you know what I'm saying? Or something like that, like translated into sports. Like maybe they wouldn't be as much of a political person or figure, but I don't think they would be the person in there fighting to see equity for their players. I don't think they would be the person in there fighting to see representation for quarterbacks or giving that sort of perspective that we would want to see. And so I think the root issue is the culture of the NFL. And that's what the culture is going to be unless there's drastic leadership change and shift in that. Because sure, you interview the black person, you might even bring him aboard, but he agrees with all of your ideas and he fits this mold or this typography of what this black person is supposed to be. And that's what takes you back to the original idea that we were talking about freedom and free speech. And I think it's a perfect analogy to talk about that's the same way they do with quarterbacks. Like, you know what I'm saying? We didn't have black quarterbacks, you know what I'm saying? And so now that we have a few more black quarterbacks, they want those black quarterbacks to fit into that standard pocket of speech and what you should be saying and how you should carry yourself. You know what I'm saying? It's like we saw, you know, certain things with the NBA with like, okay, Iverson came out and he was a culture shock. But and people got blackballed in the NBA in the past too. There were players who got blackballed in the NBA for speaking politically and speaking the power that people talk for black people. And we don't talk about that as much or more in today's conversation. But the NBA did have to go through their periods of times where they were less progressive and more conservative to where they're now at a place where we feel more represented, even though the ownership is still kind of similar. As far as like, it's not as much representation, but there is more representation in coaching, and just the overall cultural response and presence that I feel like that we get in the NFL, in the NBA. It wasn't the NBA who told LeBron to shut up and dribble. It was Fox News. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But yeah, I think it's about the culture. I think the same way the quarterbacks were treated back then is how they're doing it with team coaches right now. And I think that, sure, we'd like the opportunity, and preparation meets that opportunity in any given sport. So if that opportunity was had in any sport, I think it's sad that we have to come to the point where we need you to force you to interview a Black person just to say whether you do or don't want them. You know what I'm saying? I think that should happen regardless, but I think that because of the culture of certain institutions and certain sports agencies, that that rule will probably be beneficial, even if we can just get that one opportunity. But sadly, it might even still result in somebody being picked, even if it's a person of color who's not necessarily as representative as we would like. But sure, I would say that, sure, keep that rule in, just like we should still have affirmative action and other forms of reparative economic value for, communities of color to have an opportunity into.
Okay. Dash Dub, I'm gonna address that to you as well. Do we like this affirmative action plan that the NFL has, which they call the Rooney Rule? Would that work in all sports? I mean, the way they're saying, Kofa also kind of explained it, some might compare it to, Obama's, reign as president. Yes, he was president. Did Black people receive as much as maybe they thought they were going to receive in that presidency, far as reparations or anything like that? I mean, Juneteenth was not made a national holiday during his reign. I know Trump is taking credit for that, but at the same time, it did not follow Obama's reign. Some people say that the original person that takes the form, I once got told somebody that told me, even though Jackie Robinson was the first ball player to cross into the league, he wasn't the one that actually made the most impact when it came to the Major League Baseball. I mean, should we have this Rooney Rule in all leagues?
Well, I'm a reply to that. We got my man Ant on here. And for those that have watched before, Ant's been on here a few times. He had an interesting response, and I'm gonna read first.
Okay.
So Ant said, hell no.
Shout out to Ant.
And why he says that, he says anybody who's hired won't feel they truly earned it, even if they are more qualified. It's the same thing that affirmative action did to Black students. People said you're only here because. Which is a interesting point of view, which on the essence of what he's saying, I can't disagree with that. But at the same time, do I personally think is necessary? I do think is necessary. It's a means to an end.
Right.
So how I look at it is from a position in a power structural type way. Like, if we don't have people that look like us in those positions of power, it's hard to create change. So in some way, shape, or form, whether you want to call it the Rooney Rule, affirmative action, or whatever, we need to get people of color in those positions because they are more likely to hire and interview more people of color. Is that going to be is that going to happen every time? As Casey and Kofi alluded to, they may fit a certain profile and they may not have the courage to bring in a bunch of people of color to try and hire. But we're going to have to play the numbers game. We got to get people in the game first. And if that's the only way right now we can get them in the game, because, the Good Old Boys Network is like, nah, we just don't feel comfortable with having a person of color or a number of people of color working there, then we got to do it however we got to do it. I think I said this before. Somebody else said it before. And I think Casey Kova said it before when he's talking about Tupac. And this was another thing. Like, yo, we've been knocking. We've been knocking at the door, politely asking to get in. There wasn't a Rooney Rule for a while. We were going off the merit that, you know what, you'll pick the best person for the position. We saw that wasn't the case. So then we had to put in the Rooney Rule. And if we got to up the Rooney Rule or do whatever the next step is, when you say minority, that can mean so many things. That's female, that's Black, that's Asian, that's all types of things. You're talking about one position for a minority? Come on, man. That's breadcrumbs, G. Come on, man. Like you're all they're doing right now, because there is no more powerful mandate or repercussions, is that they're fulfilling a quota. It was like going to one of these businesses out here. These businesses are reopening back up because of COVID-19, right? So everybody has the CDC guidance and regulations of things they should do to keep their space safe. But if you don't believe in it, you're only going to do the most minimal amount of work to reopen your business. I went into a business, they had the face mask hanging on the side. Like, yeah, why you got the face mask? You're just doing the minimal amount of work to reach the quota to be able to say, hey, y'all, I did it. I'm in compliance. And that's what NFL teams are doing right now. They're doing the least amount of work to be in compliance. And if we take that away, if I feel that we take the Rooney Rule away, then I don't feel that there's any way we can break that structure, because we're not in a position of power. It is a network. They will keep in who they want and keep out who they want. So there's going to have to be a more forceful way to have minorities, Black folks, to intervene into what they got going on. And that's where Pac came to at the end. We knocked, we were polite, we asked, and then we came through the door blasting because we had enough. We had enough. And we're about at that time right now.
I feel you. Okay, so I'm going to turn the page. I'm going to the next question. As he's talking about minorities, we also are standing up for women's rights in society. And with that being said, I'm going to Trishelle, female panelist that's on with us today. Should women athletes get pay on the recognition the same as men in sports? Should WNBA get the same recognition as NBA? Should women's soccer league get the same as the men's soccer league? Women hockey the same as the men hockey?
So many layers to this answer.
Okay.
So you want to talk about, some people will go with the argument that women in sports shouldn't get paid as much because they don't bring in the same amount of income. So then what argument do you use when they do sell more tickets than local men's teams? What is the standard? We want to act like when the NBA started and the NFL started, that they were filling stadiums the very next day. It's not true, right? There has to be an opportunity for growth. You cannot expect an athlete, male or female, to stay a professional athlete and work on their craft if you do not compensate them accordingly. Bottom line, right? LeBron can't spend multiple hours a day in the gym and in the weight room if he also has to work a side job to support his family. It ain't gonna work. He's not gonna stay on top of his game. it's unacceptable for us to think that we should expect the same out of women. Why should they have to carry that load? Is there worth in women's sports? Yes, I think so, because representation is extremely important, right? Why on earth would we entertain the idea of having little girls play sports as kids if there's not an end game or a possibility, right, for them to not just play professionally, but to watch the game professionally, right? And I don't think it's about who's more talented, right, or women being worthy, right? It's the fact that we've created these opportunities, and that too should be a just opportunity, right? And I just don't think, I think structures need to change, right? So you talk about the soccer, for example, the 1999 women's team, right? And how they were World Cup champions, okay? First time, it's a big deal. And some of them, right, like had to have second jobs. How are you representing your country, right, internationally, and you have to have another job in order to do so, right? They were basically being compensated $1 a day, right? So they would show up to training camp, right, and then go work jobs, right? Like after training camp's done and they're playing like an international friendly, then they're going back to their jobs and working, right? Like, and just to me, that doesn't make sense. You can't allow the athlete to continue to sharpen or better their craft if they have to work an additional job. And if that's the case, then you don't call them professional sports, right? They're semi-professional, they're amateur. And if we have a bunch of amateur women's sports, then great, right? And I think as things develop, women are getting smarter and braver, right? And working to negotiate their fair share. They shouldn't, right? Just like we, as people of color, right, as brown people, shouldn't have to negotiate for our fair share, but that's exactly where we are.
Great. Case and Kofa. We look at it, you got athletes like Serena Williams, who I guess some might argue is top athlete in America at this time. Some would argue that. Mm-hmm. Should she be, recognized next to the LeBron James and the Tom Brady's and everybody else that's at the top of their level? I mean, like, why do we feel like they should not get that same recognition in America?
You know what? I think that's a good question. I think this is a good topic. I think the first thing is we have to kind of reconcile with the cultural lens through which we look at women's sports. A lot of guys, we suffer from this, disease like racism called sexism. You know what I'm saying? And True. We don't necessarily see things that should be equal, should having to be equal. We just necessarily see it as, like the first thing Trishelle said was, is it making as much money as men's sports? Which is like, okay, that's a fair question. But I think that the thing is, culturally, we don't put as much value on it. And that's on the onus of us as a society, right? Because I think that, like Trishelle said, it's important that we encourage our young girls to play sports and be involved with sports teams growing up from a young age, all the way to being able to matriculate to a collegiate level and a professional level, as both those have provided people with educational opportunities and economic opportunities for those who make it to the professional level. So there should be an equal playing field, all puns intended, on both of those sides. And more specifically, into your question specifically was around, what aspect was it around more specifically?
It was more related to should they not receive the same pay and recognition as men in the same sport?
Especially in terms of Serena Williams, I think we should call it like it is. To me, Serena Williams is the greatest tennis player of all time. You know what I'm saying? Woman or man, you know what I'm saying? And so I think that she should receive that recognition. And I could be biased. She could be my favorite because she's from Compton, you know what I'm saying? But she got the accolades, you know what I'm saying? And so it's like, to me, we should talk about her the same way we talk about LeBron. We should talk about the Lisa Leslies and the Candace Parkers. You know what I'm saying? We should talk about women athletes on the whole spectrum of them. They should receive the same amount of recognition and credibility, because I think, you know, we see the same thing in academia. We see the same thing in politics. We see the same thing in film, in music, that women never get their fair share in terms of recognition and in terms of the profit share. So we definitely need to do a better job of that as a culture, as a society. We need to uplift that. We need to understand and recognize it's important. And I can't speak from that with like a perfect lens. You know what I'm saying? I've been to some Sparks games. I enjoyed the Sparks. When the Lakers was losing, we was watching the Sparks. The Sparks was winning. The Sparks got championships. So that's what we value in LA. But at the same time, I can't say that I've always been an avid supporter of all the women's sports. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
The way that we as a society don't. But, you know, right now I work at a middle school and I work for MSCR. And so I'm in charge of running all the sports programs for the young men and the young women at the school. And so I want the women at our school to play, to make sure that they know that they have an opportunity to play and that we can play and we can compete and y'all can do this too. And you know what I'm saying? Y'all team is just as important as our guys team. You know what I'm saying? That's how I want our young women to feel at the school. You know what I'm saying? So I think that is something that we have to uphold as a society. It starts with the people at the top investing the money into it. You got to invest the same way you invest in the NBA, whatever your marketing campaigns are, and investing in your players. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, you got to make it just as big and you got to invest in your players. And we got to give those players that recognition, especially when we talk about somebody like a Serena Williams. And Serena Williams is just like, she made it to where we can't not notice her. She made it to where y'all gonna look at us. And so, you know, I admire Serena Williams a lot. You know what I'm saying? Serena and Venus, you know what I'm saying? And I think that other young women who come up trailblazing like Gabby Douglas and Simone Biles in sports, especially when they're representing our country too. Like, and if they're not getting the fair share, like the fact that the women's soccer teams were definitely doing way better than the men's teams, but the men's teams was good financially and the women's weren't. That's right. Just like, you know, especially on a representing of the country level, because that should be even playing field. It's not about how much money you bringing in or about the ticket sales or anything like that. You could kind of, people play stuff off with, like, you could say the ticket sales or nobody's watching it, and that's what I think the cultural problem comes in, that we should value it and respect it just as much. But, you know, on a country level, it's like, you can't say this about ticket sales. You're representing the country. So they should definitely be equally compensated and equally heralded on a level of respect. Like, you representing the country. You at the top with the top of them. And, you know, there's nothing else to it other than that. And there's a lot of guys who struggle with that. You know what I'm saying? But I think it's just something that we gotta get with. You know what I'm saying? Just period.
Okay. Urban Legend, I'm gonna throw you the same question. When it comes to women's sports and such, I think even there was an incident once where Steph Curry had it where a young lady asked him, who always loved watching him play and always enjoyed his games with the Warriors and looked up to him greatly. But when she go to the shoe store and she wanted to get a pair of Steph Curry's, there was none in the young lady section. There was nothing to represent her. And he got the letter from her and decided he was going to change that. Do we need to look deeper into women's sports and giving them the props that they deserve? I mean, when you look at Serena Williams, I mean, she may have just as many accomplishments as Michael Jordan. I know for a lot of you that's hard to accept, but when you look at her and compare her to the Tiger Woods and the Michael Jordans and everybody else out there, she holds right next to them. So, I mean, how do you feel, Urban Legend? Did we miss the mark in American society?
First of all, Serena, She's the baddest tennis player on the planet. I don't care what anybody say, you know. And I really had no idea that that 99 women's soccer team that won the World Cup that they didn't get the recognition that they deserve for actually doing that, because I feel that's just not right, you know. I don't know if it's the fact that maybe men are threatened by women who know a little something about sports or are good at sports. I mean, that could have something to do with it. I'm not 100% sure on that. But I was actually in Miami in March, not March, but in February, and we were having a conversation about sports. And then this young woman chimed in, and she was going back and forth, and me and my friend were like, wow, she knows a lot about sports. We were shocked. And I think, you know, we need to come to a point in this country where we're not shocked where women, you know, have some knowledge on sports or they're good at sports, you know. They to me, women are on the same level as men as far as their accomplishments when they achieve them, you know. And Serena, I mean, she went and had a baby, came back, and she's still the baddest on the planet, you know. And I don't see men doing that, you know.
No.
That is something truly amazing. And I almost shed a tear when she went out there and she was battling, and she deserves all the recognition any man will get, you know.
Okay, thank you. Dash to your B. Same question. We seen even with Serena not getting. They say, you know, the Black woman is one of the most unprotected commodities in America. They say that even the Black men will mistreat the Black woman and not protect her in the way that she needs to be. We saw with Serena and her treatment with the referee that maybe mistreated her and maybe caused some causes that shouldn't maybe go that way. But sports is sports, right? But we also see with LeBron James and players of that caliber, they don't get those type of ticky tacks. When it comes to women's sports, do you think they get the fair share?
No. The whoever ref wouldn't have done that to Jordan. Then Serena's basically the Jordan of the tennis game to me.
Yeah.
So they probably would have ousted that ref out of the league if he would have did something like that to Jordan. But you know, they don't. You know, a lot of people, a lot of refs, especially when it comes to women's sports, you know, they look at it differently, and it shouldn't be looked at differently. I just looked up here that, you know, getting to be treated fairly. I know we've talked about kind of pay, so I want to start there. In 2019, the highest paid WNBA player was $127,000. 120. That was the highest. The highest NBA player in 2019, Steph Curry, at $34 million. That's ridiculous. That's beyond highway robbery. That's ridiculous. So when it comes to WNBA, when it comes to Olympics, tennis, whatever it is, women should be paid on the same level as fellas. It's not incumbent on the ladies to market the sport. It's not incumbent on Jordan or LeBron to necessarily market the sport. Them brothers show up to play. They say a few things at the press conference, and it is what it is. But why is it in this instance? It's like, yo, I mean, you guys aren't pulling enough. You guys aren't doing anything. Nah, it comes down to what your marketing plan is, number one. So if you're going to operate on a professional level, then everything across the board should be professional. They should be treated professionally. It should be paid professionally. Now, when we're talking about to the attention and that the money it generates, part of it is the team. But yo, we got to look at the platforms. Yo, look at ESPN. look at Fox News. Like, look at we have all these sports shows, and all these sports shows and sports topics are dominated by men, and the topics are dominated by men. Last time I was on First Take, I just said, they got Molly, holding it down, but there's like no topics about women. So if you want to grow the game, and if people are complaining about it's not bringing in enough revenue, you need to look at all the things surrounding sports and why they're not covering it equally. That's a place to start. You want to generate more revenue? Get Nike, get Adidas, get these brands behind more women to be brand ambassadors for them. Look at ESPN and Fox News to start encompassing more topics. We just had the Last Dance with Jordan, much deserved. I would have watched something on Lisa Leslie, Cheryl Swoops. Maya Moore ain't even in the league, right? She took a year off. Crazy. They ain't talking about that, not at all. Yeah. Maya Moore is a beast. She will give anybody the business. But it's just not covered. It's just out of mind, out of sight. And to relate it to what we got going on now with all the racial tension, Black folks is looking for white folks to kind of check their white friends about conversations and things that are happening and things that are being said to try and push this movement along. We're asking white folks to check other white folks to make sure they're being more inclusive, to make sure that they're getting educated about the things and the stuff that's going on. Males need to check males in the exact same way, because we is not checking other males to say, are you being inclusive with this? Are you giving the same attention to women's sports as men's sports? What are you teaching your son or daughter as well, seeing that we're fathers? Are we saying to our son, that we may really want to get to play football or basketball? Are we emphasizing sports to them like we're emphasizing sports to our daughters? So like from a male perspective, we got to check ourselves at the same time. But to me, it's a no-brainer. It should be equal across the board. We can't sit in here and bark about Black folks not having opportunities and things, but yet, when it comes to women, it's like, well, that's something different. Nah, you're talking out both sides of your mouth. If one got to be equal, it all got to be equal. That's almost the way I started this with the stuff going on with Cap and him speaking up. If there wasn't nothing to speak up about, the brother wouldn't have been kneeling. But there was something to speak up about because people weren't being treated fairly across the board. He wanted to bring attention to it. So, we gotta look at these powers that be, the ESPN, the Fox Sports, all these little sports talk shows, and we gotta look also at the teams for the WNBA. And we gotta push forward.
All right, final question. Kason Kofa, I'm gonna go to you on the final question. Final question has to do with recreational drugs. We see that in many of these states, drugs like marijuana is looked at as not as serious as some may want to put it. And they basically have legalized marijuana use. Should athletes even get tested anymore for recreational drugs? I mean, if it's not a drug that enhances you to your abilities, say that like a steroid, should we even be testing these athletes for these recreational drugs?
I think that's a good question, and I think that we just have to be standard across the board with our organizations, right? So I agree with the notion that maybe marijuana is not that big of a deal, just like some people feel like alcohol is not that big of a deal. And alcohol is a drug. No matter how you want to put it, you know what I'm saying? It falls under the category. And if we want to look this up, talk to Google or any doctor or a neuropsychologist or a pharma-neuropsychologist, they will let you know that alcohol is to be categorized in the same category as other drugs like marijuana or, cocaine. Maybe not the same effect, but it's a drug and it does something to you psychologically. And so alcohol is legal. So, you know, NBA players can get drunk the night before of a game. Like Lamar Odom has like testified, and I think Ron Artest, that they used to like drink before some of the games sometimes to take off the edge. And anytime you got tested, it wouldn't say anything about alcohol. You couldn't be fired for that. So I think if, you know, in LA, you know, or California, if, you know, if you're not testing somebody for alcohol and gonna penalize them on that, then you can't really penalize them on weed if that's legal. But I think it's like, you know, it's the decision of the organization, because you might feel some type of way of we want our players to be in top peak condition and athletic form. So we want to withhold them from using any drug or substance that we feel might slow them down. You can put that in your contract, right? I think, you know, there's some debate as to whether it slows you down or stops you. When you look at somebody like Michael Phelps, who was like a stoner and won like 8 gold medals that year or something like that. So I'm like, you know, you see something like that, it's like, well, I'm not going to stop Michael Phelps from winning his medals and doing what he do. He know how to do what he do, so I'm going to let him do his thing. So if it's not impeding the progress of the performer, you know, I wouldn't stop it. But, you know, it's up to the organization. I just think you just need to be uniform. You're not testing people for alcohol in a state where weed is legal. You shouldn't be testing people for that either if it's not a performance enhancer.
And that brother was swimming underwater with the lung
That
capacity.
brother was swimming.
Yeah. So, Michelle Forge, I'm going to go to you. Same question. I'm looking at it. You know, a lot of times it's the Black athletes that they want to point the finger at and not give them the credibility in the end for, you know, Hall of Fames and such stuff like that, due to maybe drug abuse when it comes to recreational drugs. Should these leagues even be testing for recreational, non-performance enhancing drugs?
If it is non-performance enhancing, then it shouldn't be on the list. Plain and simple. I think it's been proven time and time again that certain drugs are not performance enhancing, right? And so then it shouldn't be on the no list. I mean, it, to me, however, each team can create their own policies on what is and is not allowed, right? But again, sports, right, reflecting what happens in our everyday lives. And I just find it so terribly ironic, right, that for decades, right, marijuana was so illegal and so terrible and the gateway drug, right? I don't even want to get on the fact about how many millions of brown people are locked up for silly drug charges, not violent offenses, silly drug charges, right? And now it's legal. And now all kinds of non-brown people are legally profiting from that very thing that puts so many behind bars. So should it be on the no list for athletes? No, it shouldn't, right? Because it was just another way for those organizations to curb and control people when they weren't at training, right? When they weren't at games, right? So because it's so easily traceable, right? Like the way your body metabolizes certain drugs versus the others, right? Some leave your body a lot quicker, and then, right? In other ways, right? Like it's, for whatever reason, it was more convenient to test, right? And put those types of drugs on that list. It's not performance enhancing. I mean, I don't think that's the reason why Phelps won 8 gold medals, to be perfectly honest with you. It might be that he consumed 6,000 calories his first half of his day. I mean, the guy's just a physical being, like his wingspan, it's ridiculous. But the weed was not the reason why, right? I mean, if you want to use it to disqualify him, whatever. But I don't think professional athletes should be tested for that specific drug. Like, we don't help you run faster, think faster, do more, right? So it's not performance enhancing. And I think it's irrelevant to test for it.
Okay. Urban Legend, same question. I mean, we've had so many athletes now, I feel like high caliber athletes that a lot of time end up being African American athletes that have been tossed out of leagues, have been, reprimanded over and over and over again off of non-performance enhancing drugs. I mean, actually, some of these drugs are actually drugs that are detrimental, maybe even to your sport. But if that's your choice to use, I mean, should the leagues be still kind of testing for these things, or should that thing also be a thing of the past?
Well, I think it all depends on whether or not the league has a ban on the drug. If it's against the rules, I mean, you would have to test for it, and if it's something that has to be collectively bargained, throughout the owners and players union. It's not something that they could just decide one day, oh yeah, we're not gonna test you, or we are gonna test you. It's something that has to be collectively bargained, and the players might not think it's fair, but the players do have some control over that, And I think that
How so?
How so? Well,
Yeah.
well, they can vote on those certain type of things, But the reason why they keep it out is because the owners, they might want this, and it's like a give and take type of thing, And they might not want something that the owners want, and so the owners say, okay, well, you can't have that then, So I think it's something that will eventually be eradicated, and because like Trishelle and Sankofa said, it's not something that is performance enhancing, and weed is just something that it might help players relax a little bit more, but it's not helping them shoot a jump shot, or it's not helping them hit a home run, So as far as that, you have to really look at whether or not this drug is helping the player. If it's not helping them, why should it be tested for?
So again, I want to thank everybody for joining the panel today, and everybody for tuning in. Case and Kofa, remind the people where they can find you.
Yes, sir. You can find me at K.SANKOFA on all platforms, just spelled as it is right here in the box. That's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, music on YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Music, and Spotify. And yeah.
Got any projects you working on at this time?
Yes, sir. Actually, currently working on another little mixtape. So I got one project that's out that we dropped February 29th called Parisia. Go stream that, listen to that right now. That's we dropped it before a lot of stuff started going down, but it's real reflective of what's going on right now in the movement and the struggle and everything. And then I just dropped a music video called The Question. It's the first song off the project. Dropped the lead single, Be Excellent, in February 1st. That song actually just got some play on Shade 45 Radio. So go check that one out. You know what I'm saying? Super excited about that. Dropped some other videos along the way, and we got another one coming out next month, and working on some more music for a project that we doing centered around Madison collaboration. So I'm the next project we working on that I got a few songs on already that I'm gonna be talking to Dash about on Thursday is a song around Madison collaboration that I'm working on right now. But in the meantime, go stream Parisia, go watch the Be Excellent video, go watch the Question video, and any other video we dropped on our YouTube page.
And that's what's up. Congratulations on all that. Tune into that, brother. Urban Legend, tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram, PASCALENEMUOH. You can find me on Facebook, same name. I believe I have a SoundCloud. I haven't used it in a while, but it's out there, Urban Legendary. You can find me on there. You can see me. I have a video out with Tayamu Denku and Big Twins. It's called Where We Live. You can find that on YouTube. Just search that up. Video's hot. Yeah. So,
Yeah, tune into that brother's music as well. Got some things going on. Trishelle Forge, what's been new with you?
Man, just trying to survive in this southern humidity these days. That's it. Just living it.
Yeah, you still into the girls soccer, right?
Since I moved, I do recreational. So I got boys and girls. I got little ones as young as 3,
Hmm.
and we go all the way up to 14 with the program that I work with. So it's a smaller program, but it's tons of fun. Getting little ones active.
When you
For
dropping
those
that
of you that
mixtape, though?
don't know, she was a beast on that soccer field as well as the basketball court.
Not really. Mixtape will be out next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Send it up. I'll mix it for you. I'll mix it and
All right.
master for you if you get it recorded down there, though.
There's still final word. Anything from the people?
Man, yeah, man. There we had Bang was supposed to be a part of this. So you know he had some responses and was on here as well. And we had Shaw Evans that's supposed to be a part of this. He couldn't do it. He had a training tonight. He sent me some videos. I'm gonna see if I can get those videos incorporated into this when we post it to YouTube. But man,
Okay.
we had a lot of people checking in, tuning in, agreeing with a lot was said. So y'all had some great points today. Somebody pointed out, we got some well-educated people on the program, somebody said. So I'm like, hey, we only choose the best of the best.
Okay, so yeah, once again, we thank you for tuning in. If you want to be on the show, please reach out to us at radio22.com as well. You can please tune in to myradio22.com is where it's at for all the latest. Talk 22 and more. You can find down there. And once again, I'm your host, Mizzle to the Jizzle. Until next time, y'all. Peace.